In this video, we're going to have a look at taking a tour through Google Earth around Johannesburg and viewing different land use zones using the Street View option. So let's go to our first site. Right, now I'm going to take the Street View guide and we're going to place it on the marker. And I want you to notice various aspects about this particular zone. Have a look at what is actually taking place, the various activities. They need quite a bit of land, open land. They potentially are still selling products to the actual population. There's some houses in the distance. There's some open land here. And if we go down the road slightly, we will end up at the entrance of someone's freeholding or plot. Before we go into the street view, I would like you to notice the surrounding land. Have a look at the open land over here and that there is a little dam sitting alongside it. I also want you to notice that there are residential properties bordering this particular location. We're going to take the street view so that we can get a closer look at what the surrounding land looks like. And I want you to notice what particular infrastructure is found on this land. Take a look at the signs, look at the equipment, look at the type of vegetation. Has it grown there naturally or has it actually been planted there? Right, let's go to our next site. Okay, let's have a look at the aerial view from above. Have a look at what you can see in terms of the roofs of the various buildings. I also want you to notice the number of swimming pools in the backyards of the various houses. And let's take a street view to get a closer look. Right, have a look at the quality of the pavement in terms of how it is maintained. And I want you to look at the size of the house as well as the potential size of the garden. Have a look at the quality of the infrastructure. Look at the walls and the security that is being used in the area. And let's exit the street view and move on to our next site. Right, in our aerial view from above, I want you to notice, firstly, how this differs to our previous location. I want you to look at the size of the roofs from above and also potentially the lack of pools and gardens. Have a look at the fact that these buildings are right next to the highway, the N14 highway, and take a look at what is actually across the road. Think about whether that would be desirable to live next to. Right, let's take a street view of the area. And what I want you to notice, I actually want to street view a little bit closer. Right, what I want you to notice is how close these houses are potentially to the highway. Try and take a look at what the houses are made from in terms of materials. Is it formal or informal materials? Look at the size of the houses. Do they have gardens? There are some food gardens, I think, in the foreground here. There is a little bit of waste disposal, like a rubbish dump. Okay, let's go to the next site. Right, before we go into our street view, I want you to take note of the size of the buildings and how they differ to the previous sites that we've looked at. Have a look at the size of the roof. Potentially look at whether there is parking lots available or not. And let's take a street view to have a closer look. Right, I want you to notice the number of cars and people on the road. Have a look at some of the buildings. Would you potentially live here or would you work here? Have a look at the height of the buildings as well. Think about what type of activities are going to occur in this area. Okay, let's go to the next site. Right, I would also like you to take a look at the size of the actual buildings, the roof size, and have a look if there is lots of parking available. Look at the fact that there are major roads leading in and out of this area, connecting to the N1 highway. Let's take a street view. I'd like you to take careful notice of what types of businesses potentially exist here. Are they making products or are they fixing things? Do people live here potentially? Try and notice whether there's lots of pollution or very little pollution. And when we zoom out again, I want you to notice how close these buildings are to the residential areas alongside, on the other side of the highway. So think about the proximity of this zone near the residential area. Let's go to our next site. Right, I want you to take a look firstly at the size of the actual building. And I want you to notice where the parking lots are and potentially how many bays there are available for parking. Let's use our street view. I want you to notice the signs, as these often give us clues as to what is actually going on in the area. Looks like a bit of construction going on, so it might be quite an old image. You can see all the cranes in the background. You can see the construction of an actual on-ramp. Let's go to the next site. Right, in this example I want you to look also again at the type of or the style of the buildings and the size of the actual roofs. I want you to notice once again the number of pools or the lack of pools and the potential size of the gardens. And let's have a street view of the actual area. I want you to take a look at the mixed use of the land in this area. There's a potential shop over here. Look at the quality of the pavement and the maintenance of the actual pavement as well as the buildings as well. This looks like some sort of hostel living. It's another housing option or potentially a business. There's a block of flats. Again, some more residential options. Have a look at the actual quality of the building. Has it been neglected? Consider the mixed use of this particular zone. Next site. In this site, I'd like you to look in the aerial view at the actual structural layout of this particular zone. Have a look at the fact that there's a central open natural region. There potentially is some recreational features surrounding the actual site. But what's more important is its proximity to a main route. Let's have a look at the street view for a little bit more of a closer look. Right, I want you to notice firstly that there seems to be some sort of access control with security. Okay, this is what potentially the buildings look like. And they're all uniform and the same. Take a look at all the cars that are parked outside of the buildings. Okay, let's go to the next site. I'd like you to have a look at how uniform the houses look, very similar in size and shape. And I want you to potentially look at the lack of swimming pools and the size of the gardens. Let's take a street view. Okay, notice the actual pavements and how they've been maintained. You can see the houses behind the walls here. And another similar view of residential zone across the road. Okay, let's look at the next site. Right, what I'd like you to look at before we do our street view here is that there are residential zones on either side, but have a look at what is running through the actual area and take a look carefully at what natural features you can notice. So potentially what this line represents here, and it's got trees all along it, it's a darker color. And then let's have a look at the street view of this zone so that we can view what type of vegetation it has in a little closer view. So have a look at how it differed to our previous example in terms of whether the vegetation has naturally grown here on its own or if it's actually been planted here. And it seems to be a border or belt that separates the various residential zones within the urban area. Right, let's look at the next zone. Right, once again, I'd like you to look at the size of the actual houses. Try and notice if there are gardens or pools. I'd like you to notice the type of materials the houses are made of. So are they formal materials or informal materials? How big are the houses? Look at your next zone. And before we go into the street view, please take notice of the type of infrastructure and buildings that surround this zone. Firstly, have a look at these structures. Try and think about what they might be used for. Have a look at the extensive use of this land. What would these potential pipes be used for? Consider the type of pollution that might be generated in this area. Have a look also at the size of the actual buildings and how much space they may take up. Let's have a look at the street view. Now we're going to view some street patterns, and you need to try and guess what type of pattern is being represented. So let's have a look at this street pattern. Right, I've highlighted each of the options, and the first one that I want us to focus on is the blue one. And if I zoom into this particular area, I want you to notice the angles that the streets make with each other. And now let's compare it to our second type of street pattern and look at the angles that have been created with the types of streets in this example. We're now going to have a look at two mystery items or land use zones. And the first mystery land use zone is land use 1. And I'd like you to take a look at how this land is being used. Look at the infrastructure potentially. Look at the open land. And let's look at mystery land use option 2. Okay, I've shaded in the zone. And I want you to look below the shading and try and think about what this land would be used for. Why are all these little trees here? Notice the little sand bunks, which is obviously different to the actual vegetation. Notice the various dams. And also think about how big the actual area is and how much land it covers.